From Trichomes Studios, I'm Jesse Betend, and this is The High Ground. On this show, we talk to the leaders of the cannabis community, CEOs, farmers, public officials, anyone making an impact on the cannabis community and beyond. The spread of COVID-19 has created numerous challenges for cannabis companies, but so far, products are still hitting store shelves. While recreational consumers might have been stocking up for 420, data suggests that patients who rely on medicinal cannabis products have also been stocking up, likely for very different reasons. My guest today is Adam Grossman, founder of Papa and Barkley. Many of their products are specifically designed for medicinal use. So in response, they've cut prices and introduced a new line of cost-efficient microdose tinctures. We'll get into the company's response to the pandemic and how they're continuing to make sure that patients get access to medicine in these uncertain times. So, Adam, what is your quarantine situation like over there?
I'm doing fine. I'm in Silver Lake in a neighborhood in Los Angeles, and I am quarantined here with my dog Cooper, and that's it, just the two of us.
And how has the pandemic affected Papa and Barkley as an organization?
Well, it is I think similarly to how many companies are being affected, we've had to reduce our production as a result of reduction in sales volume, and hours have suffered. But first and foremost, we've been having consistent meetings with the teams to inform them about developments, both at the company level and at the community level. We've been pretty active in reaching out to government officials around sort of cannabis advocacy in the effort to keep our business going. And cannabis has been recognized in California as an essential business. So we are lucky enough to be able to continue to operate. Mostly, we've just been monitoring pretty closely the resources that everybody else has been monitoring, but also getting copies municipality by municipality of the COVID response memos that they have issued, because in our market, it's really the municipalities that determine at the end of the day whether or not the dispensaries, for instance, remain open. I've proactively been writing both at the state level and to some of the municipalities, the leadership, the mayor of LA, for instance, just to reinforce and make the case for the need for the business to continue. Many of the folks that take our products are treating very serious diseases in terms of chronic conditions, some of our tinctures, and so they really do need these products for pain relief and would otherwise put a stress on the rest of the healthcare system. So I do believe passionately that we play a role in helping people through this crisis, and that's what I've been trying to communicate.
We did see a spike in the purchasing of CBD products right after the beginning of shelter in place. Just anecdotally, from the conversations that are occurring and what you're seeing within your organization, do you know if that can be attributed to a sort of stockpile sensibility like we saw with toilet paper and other necessities, or are new people coming on and trying CBD? Are people using it in new ways? Do you have a sense of where that spike came from?
Yeah, I think your first comment was accurate. I think it was largely sort of this instinct to hunker down and hoard some stuff and make sure people had what they needed. So we did see a brief spike in sales at the end of March, and have seen a pretty dramatic cutback over the following weeks. And so we're currently on a run rate basis at about 50% of our normal activity. I should also clarify that we're in both markets. We are in the regulated market for THC infused cannabis products in California, but we do sell online our CBD line of products, and we have seen sort of a continued uptick in volume for the online part of our business.
Obviously, there are a lot of concerns about access, especially with medicinal patients. And with cannabis being deemed an essential service, that assuages some of the fears. But if this goes on for a number of months, can you give some sort of sense of security to people who rely on specific products for medicinal reasons that shelves will still be stocked and that they'll be able to access the products that they need?
I think so. We have been monitoring sort of supply chain implications, and the plants continue to grow, and farmers will continue to harvest. So we've been in close contact with our partners on the supply side. We're seeing that for a lot of our packaging comes from China, and so ships are starting to move there as well, and we're in a good position. So for our people, I am confident we'll be able to keep products on the shelf, even if the crisis continues the way that it seems like it may.
There have been some news stories. I'm thinking specifically of one that happened recently in New York, where the state's attorney's office had to send out a cease and desist order to a quote-unquote CBD manufacturer that was marketing one of their products as quote-unquote immunity oil for coronavirus. And we've seen a lot of scams out there that are preying on people's fears in the midst of a pandemic. How does that make you feel just on a personal level? And how do you sort of combat that as an organization that markets their products medicinally?
Yeah, it's very disturbing to see anybody seeking to take an advantage in a global pandemic when we should all be coming together. And in terms of us as a company, we are very mission driven. The company started because of an experience I had with my father in the medicinal use of cannabis for pain relief and a topical. I think relative to the cannabis industry, are one of the longest running companies in this space, with a clear focus on medicinal use and efficacy, and hundreds, if not thousands now, of real use cases of people taking the products and having life-changing experiences. And so it is particularly offensive, I guess, from that perspective, to see folks trying to take advantage at a time like this. And when we see sort of the explosion of the CBD market broadly, I think you do have or had maybe companies rushing into that space for more of a profit motive than really for the promise of the potential of the plant, which is kind of behind everything that we do. And of course, everybody wants to be successful and have a profitable company, but I think if you look within cannabis, you do find a high percentage of companies that actually do operate with a high level of ethical code, and that's certainly where we operate and will continue to operate.
You guys also take testing and labeling very seriously.
We do, for sure. The standards required in the California cannabis market are super rigorous, and for us, there are some basic premises around the products that we make, which I think is what's reflected in the success that we've had. And number one is sourcing clean cannabis, and we're lucky enough to be located up in Northern California in Eureka, and we source from local farmers who are multi-generational in many cases, and it's all sun-grown, outdoor, pesticide-free cannabis. So starting with the clean cannabis, and then all of our methods of moving the cannabinoids from the plant to the products are either mechanical, like pressing rosin from kief, or and are otherwise all solvent-free. So no chemicals are used in the extraction or infusion processes. For the most part, we're cooking the biomass in one of three base oils for the majority of our products, and gently transferring that full spectrum whole plant profile. So whatever the certificate of analysis for the flower was, in terms of not just the THC and CBD, but the CBN, CBG, THCA, the the 100 cannabinoids that are found within the plant, that same chemical profile is what flows into the oil and into the products that we make, as opposed to using a distillate or an isolate or a chemical process, which 95% of our competitors do. So those premises are where we're from, and it's about putting on our body or in our body the purest formulations without any chemicals, because that's what we would want for ourselves and do want for ourselves. And that's very much what we're about from a brand perspective.
You mentioned that the impetus for starting the company came from this experience with your father. I think it's a great story. Would you mind just telling it for us?
Sure, my pleasure. What was happening was back in 2014, I was looking at the cannabis space with my longtime business partner and another friend from the perspective of maybe forming a fund and investing in the space and working with entrepreneurs and early stage companies, as I had done through my own career as sort of a serial entrepreneur. At the same time, I was taking care of my parents, who were elderly and needed my help, and commuting back and forth from New York City, where I was living, to Boston, where they were living in the house that I grew up in. And my dad developed a back condition, spinal stenosis, that left him in terrible pain and bedridden. And so I moved home to take care of him, and he just was getting worse, and we put him in the hospital, and he got worse, and he got put onto hospice care. And we were told that if he didn't get out of bed in the next week or two, he probably wouldn't. And none of the traditional medication was working, the pharmaceuticals, methadone and tramadol, and nothing was working. And so I was desperate. And at the suggestion of a friend who was in California and saw a bomb in a dispensary there, went online and looked up formulas on YouTube and how to make a pain bomb. And I called up a high school buddy and got 2 ounces of the best weed that I could get, and borrowed a crock pot from a neighbor, and went to Whole Foods to get the beeswax and the coconut oil and the other ingredients, and put $500 worth of weed into the crock pot with the coconut oil to make the strongest batch of bomb that I could. And the next day, strained out the plant matter and mixed up the batch and applied it to my father's back, and I could get him out of bed. And it was amazing. And long story short, he with time and continued application of the bomb and getting him to eat, he got better. He actually got off hospice, which hardly ever happens. And I started giving away samples of the bomb to friends and family, and that started informing what we were talking about on the business side of things. And then following the sort of the passion project led me out to California, where I met my partner Guy Rocor, who is our chief product officer, and really I call Guy an artist with the plant. He's an amazing grower and extractor of oils and formulator of products. He had actually worked with a group back in 2014 from New York that had bought a license in Colorado, and he developed their vape pen product and helped build their manufacturing facility and navigate the licensing with the Colorado MED. So he was really the perfect partner. So yeah, we launched in June of 2016 with the bomb as our first product, and have been growing ever since.
Is the balm still sold in its original recipe?
It is, and it remains one of our top selling products, which I'm super proud of. We've since then we've iterated into other topicals, including transdermal patches and body oils. Now we have body lotion and the face cream. That is actually, the face cream is coming out next quarter. It's sold in our CBD line, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a nationally available line since it is under the THC threshold. So it's a CBD product that is able to be sold nationally.
So when you were putting that initial batch together, was this just a shot in the dark, or how much did you really believe that this would work?
Well, as I mentioned, it worked incredibly well, and I, for a long time, was giving samples to everybody, friends and family, and getting tremendous feedback. So it definitely worked. And I guess aside from my experience with my dad, I was also walking my dog. That was Barkley, by the way, down the beach by my parents' house, and there was another dog on the beach that was limping, and I had some balm on me, and we put some of the balm on the leg of the dog that was limping, and 20 minutes later the dog wasn't limping anymore, and that was sort of a significant aha moment as well. So I never doubted that the balm was effective. And interestingly, when he and I first started working together, he is an expert in extraction technology, and so sought to replicate the formula with a distillate. But we really found that, and this has to do with what we call the entourage effect, which I know you know what that is, which is the beneficial interaction of all of these cannabinoids and this notion of whole plant and true plant medicine. By cooking it in the crock pot in that method, even the chlorophyll, the green color that came from that, it was all part of the sort of secret sauce. So the experience of kind of dialing in and reconfirming that formula really set the tone for the rest of our product development around this notion of whole plant and solventless. So very gentle, clean, or mechanical ways to process the plant, and then making sure that it has this full spectrum, all of the cannabinoids and plant fats and terpene profiles, all of the beneficial compounds, because this plant hasn't been studied, and they're finding every day that each of these component parts has its own benefit. So we're quite confident in this approach. And I think if you look at how we sell in the California market, on the topical side, we had over half of the California market for topicals. And I think that's not just because we do nice branding, it's because our products work better.
So beyond the efficacy of the balm, which you realized early on, there's this whole other component to making a commercial product, right? Which is the sort of aesthetic elements of making something look good on a store shelf, the smell, how it feels, how it looks. What was the journey like going from creating this thing in your kitchen to turning it into something that someone would want to pick up on a shelf and plunk money down for?
That's a great question. We have a series of corporate priorities that are on the walls in a lot of our facilities, and the first one is quality first. This business, which I guess started out of this experience that I shared, and is coupled with sort of the promise of cannabis that was remains and started at least officially for us in 2016. I mean, I'm giving a long-winded answer, but it's so aspirational. So right from the start, we wanted to create something that was special. I'd had this experience. I knew this product was magical. And so I wanted to make sure that it was reflected in the highest quality packaging to really represent what it was, and to be best in class. That was always the vision that we had. And that discipline informed, I think, our decisions around packaging and aesthetics. And we really feel like we are in a great position to have that first conversation with people, because it's hard to argue with a bomb that you rub on your 90-year-old dad and it doesn't get him high. It just takes away his pain. And so we were able to have that conversation, and it gets more complicated, obviously, when you're dealing with tinctures and consumables. But what we've done, I think, pretty amazingly, and it's really Guy's skill, is iterate a whole bunch of different products around that premise, and really be able to move the needle in terms of the medicinal use of the product. So on the tincture side of things, for instance, we just came out with a living tincture, which is primarily THCA, so far non-decarboxylated form of THC, so far less psychoactive. And this is something that people can take during the day and have sort of that beneficial kind of glow and active state of focus, but without being high or feeling tired. Our 1-to-1 tincture is a formulation that's THCA 1-to-1, and there are many interesting use cases that we get from folks about being able to either stop taking things like Klonopin and pharmaceuticals for anxiety to treating more severe chronic type conditions. And I don't want to make any claims on the air, but anecdotally, there's a wide swath of people that in fact do treat significant conditions using these products. And we just feel lucky to be able to iterate around different formulations and different delivery methods to provide a wide swath of solutions to folks that need help.
Well, that's interesting because I've heard you talk before about this as plant medicine and personalized medicine, in that there's a certain degree of trial and error and kind of matching the right product to a person's body or situation. For somebody who is just beginning, I think there's kind of a misconception out there. All medicine has a certain journey aspect and a bit of trial and error and responding to side effects until you find the right thing for you. But when it comes to cannabis, I think there's an extra barrier to climb for people who might be hesitant about where the product comes from. What would you say to somebody who is just beginning this journey and curious about CBD as a medicinal replacement to traditional medicines? How do they start?
First of all, they should go to our website, and we have a wealth of resources. So papabarkley.com. And there's a site called PlantMade that we also have. And so lots of resources in terms of educational materials. And education is critical for us as a company. It is one of our core values, and it's embedded in everything we do. In terms of the advice, I think the way you put it is absolutely the case, which is it is a journey, like with other medicines. And for those that are concerned with the psychoactive effects, which many people are, and understandably so, I think you would start with topicals if you have muscle pain, or even to take a bath before bed for stress reduction. We have a bath salt product. People report a lot of usefulness to help them get a good night's sleep. In terms of when you start to experiment with tinctures, I would suggest starting with our CBD-rich tincture. The 30-to-1 does not get you high, and there's none of that paranoia that people typically associate with cannabis that they are quite concerned with. So that product is meant to be taken on a regular basis, and it builds up into your system like other types of medicine. People generally see a better regulated sleep cycle, a general reduction of anxiety. And then there is the further complexity about dosage. So I would, if for those that are still confused by that quick explanation of a pretty complicated question, I would just advise going very slow, researching it, and really reach out to us. If you are, I'd be happy and often spend time talking to people about how they can utilize the products, because the potential for amazing impact on your health is there. And so navigating the journey in a way that you can really control the process and not have a bad event is really easily done once you kind of frame the discussion the right way. Even further to the point, our CBD line, which is online at papabarkleycbd.com, none of those products are psychoactive. And so that's really the starting point for generally for people. I would say, you can get into those products and not have any fear of a negative experience.
Papa and Barkley recently announced a new line of microdose tinctures, and part of the messaging around that was this was an effort to provide products to people at an affordable rate. Tell me a little bit about the thinking behind launching the product, the timing, and whether or not this has anything to do with what we're all living through right now.
Well, we lowered prices significantly across the board on all of our products. In a lot of the markets, we've been giving significant discounts, and that's more closely related to the crisis that we're in right now. The microdose tinctures have 25% more cannabinoids per bottle than the industry average, and are far cheaper. So really, we introduced the microdose tinctures, which represent all of the different formulations that I was talking about earlier. And the real strategy there was to make them super affordable, because generally speaking, while our other products are extremely affordable on a price per milligram basis, because there's 900 milligrams within a 30 milliliter bottle of tincture, the prices on shelf are pretty high, and particularly high now that with all the economic troubles in the world. So really the microdose tinctures are to provide a low price alternative for folks, particularly folks that are coming into the market for the first time. So it's $22 is the retail price for 15 milliliters, and $40 for 30 milliliters, and that's 450 milligrams of cannabinoids in a 30 milliliter bottle for $40. So I think it's the most price effective option that's out there, and the quality is without doubt best in class. So I would encourage people that are just looking in the California market for a low priced alternative to start trying tinctures. It's a wonderful deal.
Adam Grossman, founder of Papa and Barkley. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
You can find more cannabis industry reporting at Trichomes.com, as well as more great shows like this one. If you're a member of the cannabis community and have a story you want to share with us, reach out. You can reach the show at highground at Trichomes.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. It really helps others find the show. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at Trichomes.com and following us on all social media. The High Ground is produced by David Fortin. I'm Jesse Betend, and thank you for listening.